Hello everyone and welcome to Sinful Gaming. I hope you're all doing well, I hope you're all staying safe, and most of all, I hope you're all fighting that war against the grey. Today's video we're going to do a Blacklight review, and today we're checking out Leviathan by Darius Hinks. Now, as always, I do like to listen to the audio version while I'm doing other hobby, doing housework, looking after the kids, whatever it is. I generally listen to the audio versions. I do think that, some of the narrators can really add a lot to some of these stories, and Theo Solomon, who narrated this particular story, did a fantastic job at bringing the Ultramarines and indeed the other characters within the story to life. So, with that said, this is the book that came out with the launch of the Leviathan box set. This, is the sort of start of the Fourth Tyrannic War and all of that. So, let's get talking about the story here. And so, the dream. It is a portent of the end. The fortress world of Regium has a proud history. For millennia it has endured when others have fallen to ruin and damnation, standing defiant in defense of the Imperium of Man. But now it is shaken. Parasitic plagues run rampant, and Regium's citizens are haunted by dreams of horrific monsters feasting upon their flesh and marrow. Lieutenant Castamon of the Ultramarines recognizes these signs of an impending Tyranid invasion all too well. Rallying his warriors, the battle-hardened veteran launches a strike force to slaughter the Xenos in the outer system before it can reach Regium. However, as this new tendril of highfalutin Leviathan proves unpredictable and deadly, Castamon and his first company must harness all their skill, might, and zeal, or face utter annihilation. Today's video is brought to you by Gap Games, a fantastic retailer in Australia for a variety of different miniature war games. If you'd like to help support the channel, we have an affiliate link where by clicking on and purchasing, you'll help support the channel, but you'll also help support Gap Games, which is a fantastic servant to the community. And so though, what is this story's purpose? As I said, this story gives us a look into the opening moves of the Tyranids and indeed the Space Marines and indeed the Ultramarines more specifically in the start of the Fourth Tyrannic War. We get shown a wide variety of new Tyranid and Space Marine units, like any of these sort of launch box set books that come out alongside such things. They always show us, the new units that are existing. We get to see things like Infernus Marines, we get to see Stone Guard Veterans, and we get to see, other units, and we also get to see things on the side of the Tyranids, like Neurogaunts and stuff like that as well. All sort of pushed to the front of the sort of action, which is really cool. We get to see the new stuff, which is important. But also, a big part of the story here is it shows the evolution of the hive mind. The hive mind is now starting to realise that this galaxy maybe isn't falling over as easy as other galaxies have in the past, and it now needs to give its minions a sort of sense of independence, a sense of self in some cases, where many of these minions now are starting to think more than they used to. We always had somewhat independent creatures like hive tyrants and stuff like that. Definitely had some sort of independence, but we're talking creatures that are almost entirely independent of themselves and are just sort of willing servants of the hive mind. But also, as the galaxy has been torn apart and with the Cicatrix Maledictum, and we've had things, start to go a bit wrong with the warp and stuff like that, we can see more Tyranid creatures that can harness that particular power of the warp more strongly and more easily pushed to the forefront as well. This would, mean things like our Neurotyrant that we've seen, but also creatures that also are better against Psychers, so things like the Psychophage and all of that as well pushed to the forefront of the battles in this Fourth Tyrannic War. And so, our main character. Now, the story, and indeed the blurb, does talk about Lieutenant Castamon quite a bit, but I really don't think that his is the story we follow more than anything in this. I think the main character, for me, in the story when reading it, was Apothecary Biologist Voltus. And the Apothecary Biologist, he really does feature heavily in this story, and we do get a look at quite at what these particular apothecaries are all about. Now, Apothecary Biologist, unlike a regular sort of Space Marine apothecary, he is not there to sort of heal. He is not, a fixer of people and stuff like that. He's not a doctor. Well, he is just a very different sort. Voltus is an apothecary biologist, and his thing is understanding the alien. He understands how to fundamentally break them down, understands how to beat them, and understands their biology, as his name would suggest. A biologist, he is a biologist. on how to defeat them, developing countermeasures to different strains of things. And it is through the story that we see, the Tyranids have evolved massively, and it is up to Apothecary Biologist Voltus here to sort of come up with new ways to combat the Tyranids. As they have changed, his research must be further pushed to help sort of defeat these particular creatures. And he does take center stage, we get the parts of him taking specimens, learning about the Tyranids, learning the changes within them, and also some fighting scenes with him as well. He is still a Space Marine. I think that's always something to remember, he's still a Space Marine. An Apothecary of a Space Marine is still a Space Marine at his core, and he will still kick some absolute butt of anyone who gets too close to him. He also still is an Apothecary as well. While it's not his primary duty, he will harvest gene seed, like many of his others counterparts in the Apothecarium detachments of the Space Marines. But for me, he is the main character of the story. I don't think that anyone else sort of takes his place in this. There's definitely, Lieutenant Castamon plays a major part in the story, as well as does some of the other brothers of the Ultramarines, but he by far takes, the major sort of front and center point for me. And so, what does change about our main character over the course of the story? And I think an interesting point here is to talk a little bit quickly more about Biologist Voltus, and that he's not a very brotherly Space Marine. He's very sort of inward thinking. He's sort of, included in his work heavily. He is very solely focused on his work, and he doesn't sort of share those bonds of camaraderie like many of these Space Marines do within the squads. And of course, this happens to many different Space Marines that are of these sort of separate detachments, like chaplains, librarians, etc. That aren't directly in the companies. They are slightly different, slightly outsiders from the rest of their chapter. But over the course of the story, we definitely learn quite a bit about Voltus, and indeed Baraka, who is actually a very close friend and actually completed the trials to get into the Ultramarines with Voltus at the very beginning, which is really cool. But for me, I think the main thing that changes about him over the course of the story is his outlook on how sort of he needs to work on his ability, he actually starts to doubt himself a little bit, and maybe, he didn't doubt himself enough at the beginning of the story. He was very sure of himself, and he started to realize fallacies in his own personal being, and now he needs to work on them. And I don't know whether this will be the last time we see Voltus. It definitely feels like there could be more from him in this, which would be really cool. I like that we've seen in the last Age of Sigmar story in the Thunderstrike and other stories, we actually saw the characters from that come back in the Hammers of Sigmar novel, which was really, really cool. So I'd love to see Darius Hinks get a second shot at writing more about Biologist Voltus in the future. And so what does this particular book do well? And I want to say straight from the start, the big thing about this is it doesn't feel like an advert. This is definitely that some of these novels have fallen down from in times gone by, where some of these novels that come out alongside the launch box, alongside new editions, can feel just like an advert for the brand new units that are coming out. This one, however, it does showcase some of the new units. We don't actually see all of the new units. And indeed, we read about things that weren't in the launch box as well, which is really cool. But this one doesn't feel like an advert, and I think that is something to be really praised, that it shows off all the new stuff. We see an Apothecary Biologist, we see Infernus Marines, and all of that. We see Neurogaunts, we see a Neurotyrant and other things as well within the story. We see Psychophages, but it doesn't feel like it's an advert for those models inside the box set, which I think is a really big part, because we've seen so many of these novels just become that, I think, in time. And so really, really big props to making this not be that sort of thing. And so, who would like this book, though? Now, obviously, if you're a Space Marine fan, especially if you're an Ultramarines fan, this is going to be a story for you. It really does a good job of showcasing the Ultramarines being pretty darn cool in it. And yes, the Ultramarines are cool. I think the Ultramarines get a ton of unneeded hate. I actually don't mind them as a legion, as a chapter. But also, if you're a Tyranid fan, I think this is probably one of the better Tyranid novels I've had. Obviously, the best stuff for Tyranid fans generally be the Genes to the Cult sort of story. I think, with the Genes to the Cults having a little bit more personality, they're easy to sort of read along to. Day of Ascension would be a really great story if you're a Tyranid fan, by the way. But I think this one does a good job of giving the Tyranids some really good power, making them seem like a very versatile threat. They are, something that does struggle to be a adversary that you can really get behind and really get into the mind to. I think Devastation of Baal did a really good job of showing a Lictor as a creature in there, and sort of showing things from the point of view of the Lictor, which is another good one if you're a Tyranid fan. But it can be hard to show Tyranids, and so I think they do a really good job with a bunch of it, which is nice. And so, in summary, I think this was solid. This was an enjoyable read. It had lots of little plots as well scattered throughout the story. I don't think I've given enough credit to in this. That really did a good job of showing the terror of a Tyranid invasion and what it can do to the planet as a whole. So we do get, a nice couple of, I think there's probably about 3 or 4 little short sort of plot lines of mortal humans within the story that are really nice to sort of follow. That give, some really good sort of imagery and some good ideas of like how the Tyranids have evolved as well in different ways. But there are, a couple of feel-good moments, which I think every 40k novel needs the feel-good moments. I know that 40k is supposed to be grimdark to some people, and some people only like grimdark, but you need those wins in there for me, and I think this definitely provided some of them in amongst all the sort of terror and stuff. Those little wins make everything okay, just give a little bit of hope. It makes for not reading such a doom and gloom all the time story, and I think this book does a really good job on it. This was solid. This was enjoyable. Just over 12 hours long. It wasn't, too long in the tooth. I think it definitely kept things interesting, and it definitely felt like it had multiple acts. I feel like if really, this probably could have been 2 or 3 novels in and of themselves. In all honesty, I don't think I would have disliked it. Obviously, it's really well done as a single one, but I definitely think there was enough story and enough sort of parts and bits and pieces and plot for this to be multiple stories. But let us know what you thought about Leviathan by Darius Hinks, and indeed, let us know what you thought of Theo Solomon's performance if you listen to the audio version as well, down in the comments below. And so, thank you for watching. We hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please don't forget to leave a like, subscribe to the channel for more content, and also drop a comment down below letting us know what you thought about the video. If you'd like to come chat more with me and other members of our fun little community, we have a Discord server which is linked down in the video's description, and also linked down in the video's description are the best ways to help support the channel, either by Patreon or YouTube members, or by grabbing yourself some merch from our Teespring store as well. All of those are linked down in the video's description, and a special thank you to our YouTube members and patrons. We'd like to give you all a shout out, so thank you to our YouTube members John Castle, Disco, James Tillman, Monty's Tabletop Terrain, Ariana Edwards, Broken Chef, the Johnny84, Lock Lorick, Ronya, Green Roots Gaming, and our patrons Wasaren, Kenny Lyle, Outer and Shot First, Andrew Bowen, Cure Dynamic, JJ Austrian, Average Wargamer, Domir, Mark Harvey, James Cater, Benjamin Swallows, Redman, Iron Grinch, Colorblind Magic, Grimscold, and Andy C. Thank you all once again, everyone. Stay safe, stay well, and most of all, keep fighting that war against the grey. Ciao for now.